Mhm.
So, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stoic Answers. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to James Daltrey, who I think I'm going to introduce as one of the greatest Stoic intellectuals I've seen in the Stoic sphere around. It is, and
Wow.
he participates a lot in on living Stoicism. Is that right?
Yeah, Living Stoicism. Yeah, it's the Facebook
That's
group.
where
Yeah.
I've seen you the most active. I
hmm
think that group specifically is really good if you're into deep Stoic philosophy. So that's it. I would say that James also works in the travel industry, and he studied Russian and French. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah.
linguistics, and that's what introduced him to Stoic philosophy in a way because it's pretty similar. And 5 years ago, you stumble into it, kind of, right, into
hmm
Stoic philosophy, and he read and read and read, and now he knows quite a lot about Stoicism. So awesome. So we're gonna have a couple of questions, and James is gonna we're gonna have a conversation with the questions. So the first question is, what is Stoicism in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, it's a very big nutshell. In a nutshell, it really is a system of kind of life, the universe, and everything. It's a Hellenistic philosophy, and it involves broadly an explanation of what the world is, of how it works, um, kind of what humans are within that context, and then kind of like how we understand ourselves, how we understand our lives, how we understand the world, and how we communicate that to each other. Um, and most importantly, which is the ethical side of it, is how we should act, how we should live our lives. It's how to live a good life would
Yes.
be the shortest
Yeah.
explanation I can think of.
Yeah, definitely. Because that would be like the ethics part of it, right? Because there's I mean, it's just not a philosophy of ethics. It kind of wants to explain the universe even.
Well, any theory of ethics, I mean, ethics basically means character.
Yeah.
That's what it means originally. And for the Greeks, how you act in the world is dependent on your character, kind of what you're like, uh, determines kind of like what you do, how you respond to the world. But in order to know what to do, how to be an ethical person, you have to like know what you are,
Oh,
in a real sense, like in
yeah.
a biological sense, and kind of like the context in which you live, um, which is the world, or the cosmos, as the Stoics put it, and how you relate to that. So I think any ethical system does have some explanation of how the philosopher in question thinks the world works.
Yes, definitely.
Like a Christian, for example, will have they'll have their Bible narrative, and they'll have their understanding of how everything goes. So like the Christians have a worldview. So every philosophy has a worldview, and the Stoics have their own particular understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what I like a lot about Stoicism is that I think it's too real. Like it's realism.
hmm
Like it tries to deal with things as plain as they are, so that you can then decide what your ethical system is going to be, right? So I think in comparison to other philosophies, it's really grounded. Like scientifically speaking, you can be a Stoic.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's a no miracles philosophy.
Yeah.
It's no, there are no spirits. There's nothing you can pray to. Nothing is going to miraculously come and help you. They're physicalists. So for anything to exist at all, it has to be kind of bodily. You know, it has to be able to interact with something. So their idea of the cosmos, their idea of physics, does fit with modern physics quite well. Is deterministic. You know, so there is cause and effect. So, you know, you are a real physical creature living in a real physical world, dealing with real physical situations, and you have to deal with that as best you can, given the resources you have as a thinking kind of physical animal. They had us as animals. It sounds very modern. They didn't think we were kind of endowed with some special spirit or some kind of mission, if you like. We're just animals. We're just complicated cats and dogs. We speak.
Yeah.
That's the big thing for them.
Yeah, extremely complicated. And in that sense, I well, if you're going to have a philosophy of life, you would want to have the philosophy of life that actually works to you in the best sense possible, right? And if you think about Stoicism and its adherence to life as it is, my next question is, why Stoicism instead? I choose Epicureanism because Epicureanism, I think it's closely related to Stoicism in a way that it's you try to find pleasure, but not pleasure in the sense that having ice cream and all that, but having the.
I mean, the Epicureans are similar insofar as they're realists,
yes,
like the Stoics. You know, they live in a no miracles universe. And they, like the Stoics, are looking for advice on, or to give advice on how to live, how you should best live your life. The difference lies in that they identified as the goal in life as a life of pleasure, of simple pleasure, not of kind of like champagne and cigars and parties all the time, but, you know, kind of like learning how to enjoy the sensual aspects of life. You know, if you can enjoy bread and water, you know, like you're kind of you know, you can live well very frugally. But the idea that that people are motivated only by pleasure, only by their own physical needs, is kind of frankly false, because people do things for other people for no reason. People will sacrifice themselves for other people. People will, you know, like the people who join the army. People will put themselves in danger.
Don't you think that's another kind of pleasure, like the pleasure that it gives you of altruism, you could say?
With that, I mean, that's strange. That's to kind of like twist what pleasure is, kind of beyond all meaning. I mean, if there's an example that Cicero gives of Regulus, who's he's taken prisoner by the Carthaginians, who were the Romans' enemy at the time. The Carthaginians released him back to Rome and said, "Okay, negotiate a peace for us, but we want you to come back." And he gave his word, and he went back to Rome. He said, "Well, you know, like, don't trust these people. You know, they're gonna stiff you," and then went back to Carthage to be tortured and killed.
Okay.
You know, and if you want to say, well, you know, like he did that for the pleasure of saving his honor, you know, like how is submitting yourself to torture? How is that pleasure? You know, so it's if you extend pleasure to include the opposite of pleasure,
I get you.
Your pleasure doesn't mean anything at all, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But the big thing that I think is that the Stoics are motivated by this idea of a human connection. It goes to the physics. You know, there is only one cosmos. There is one unified world. There's one humanity. There's one human family. Kind of, I care for myself, and I also care for you. You know, like I care for myself because I'm kind of within myself, I'm here.
Yeah.
But, you know, I also care for you, and I care for my family, and I care for other people, for the sake of caring for them. There's no other reason, you know, like, why do you give a hungry child food? In order to give a hungry child food. An Epicurean will say, well, you only do that if you get something back. And
Oh,
that's,
okay.
you know, so, you know, like I've fed the starving baby because it made me feel good.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah, like so you could say that there are things that are inherently good, such as, I would say the next question is, what is virtue? Do you think that that would be that thing that, in comparison to the Epicureans, that they pursue pleasure, the Stoics pursue virtue? So that would be like the second step, that how the Stoics step away from the Epicureans,
Well,
or not?
yeah, I mean, the Epicureans had virtue, but it was only
A means to an end.
yeah, it was only a means to an end. And for the Stoics, virtue is, you know, is being a good person.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest, to be kind, to be generous, to be just, to be fair, to be you know, moderate, you know, to participate actively in human society. And the Epicureans will say, well, yes, well, I'll do that, but only insofar as it's good for me. So it's kind of like, for me, there's something kind of like slightly, not psychopathic, but, you know, like, it's something very self-centered about it. It's like if you look at, you know, like, questions like, why shouldn't I steal? And, you know, why should I not take your stuff? And the Stoics would say, well, kind of like, it's not yours. And, you know, Ricardo is, you know, he's your brother, you know, like, why would you deprive him of something? And that would be the Stoic justification. The Epicurean justification would be, well, he might find out and punch you in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really an ethical system. There's a thing, I was thinking about this after we spoke yesterday. In Plato's Republic, there's a story he tells. There's a magic ring, kind of tells this fable, called the Ring of Gyges. And if you put it on, you become invisible.
Yeah.
So you can do whatever you want, and nobody will ever find out. And the question is, what kind of person would you be if you had that ring?
Yeah.
And a Stoic, ideally, would not take other people's stuff. They wouldn't spy on people, because, you know, like, they're motivated by this idea of virtue, this idea of goodness.
Yeah.
Whereas the Epicurean would go crazy. You know, they just.
Yeah. I think I find a relationship to what you said with Ralph Waldo Emerson's on self-reliance. And he talks about, if you get into fortune by other means, like by inheritance or by other, you know, but not by your own actions.
Mm-hmm.
He says that, like, the self-reliant man wouldn't want that, because the fact that he can put himself to work and by the power of his will get on to the good things, that's what's enough for him. I find a lot of relationship to that, to the Stoics, that it's your will and your capacity to be virtuous what you'll be focusing on, because that's what's I would say, in comparison to the Epicureans, the greatest thing in life. Would you agree on it, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things there. I mean, there's the thing is Cicero again with the for persona. You know, like, there's stuff that you're just kind of like the cards that you're dealt with. You know, kind of like where you're born, when you're born, who your parents are,
Yeah.
which language you speak. They're all kind of like bang. They're just kind of like given to you. And you kind of have this corner, which is the will, as you say, which is what you have to work with within what you have. And the Stoics were very much that the only thing that matters was your this will, let's call it will, to make correct choices, to make correct judgments, and that the material that you inherited, if you like, really aren't important. Marcus says something. Marcus Aurelius says something. He says, even in a palace, it's possible to live well. So he sees kind of like living, like the life of luxury, surrounded by bodyguards, as the most powerful man in the world, is actually kind of a drawback for him. But he's saying, but in spite of this drawback, I can still like be a good person.
Exactly. Because I don't know, I guess it should be really hard if you're surrounded by all that luxury, all that. I mean, it's incredible that Marcus Aurelius was the way he was in comparison to the other emperors like Caligula or something like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he wanted to be. He didn't want to be emperor. Like he would.
Exactly.
As a child, apparently, whether a young man, he wanted to be a philosopher.
Yeah.
The philosophers at the time, they're very simple people. They just had a cloak and a stick, and they slept on the floor, and that's how he kind of wanted to live. He says in the Meditations, kind of like, put down your books. Like you've got to be an emperor, because like he rather would be.
It's like he was the closest to the philosopher king that I think Plato talks about, right?
Yeah, that's that's complicated, but yes. What Marcus has in common with Plato's philosopher kings is that they're not interested in the benefits of the position. I think Plato, he says, well, we're going to make these philosopher kings, we're going to make them stupendously rich. So they're never going to be bothered in kind of like being corrupt or manipulating decisions for their own benefit. Marcus, he didn't want to be emperor. He's actually, I think that's because he's back to Plato again. It's the Ship of Fools. If people want to be emperor, they shouldn't be allowed to be emperor.
Which is how the world works right now.
Yeah, kind of like the people that get into power are very good at getting into power.
Yes.
That's what they're good at. But are they the right people for the job?
Yeah.
Well, probably not. So the Greeks used to kind of like appoint people. They say, okay, you're the best person for the job. So you're going to be emperor, whether you want to or not. He was adopted, like his he was chosen by his adoptive father.
Oh yes, yeah.
So you have to be kind of like qualified.
Yeah, exactly.
And the others like Nero and Caligula, they just went insane with the power.
Yeah,
and Marcus just wasn't interested in the power.
Yeah. I think I have a question with Caligula and Nero, because they were obviously. I saw Caligula's movie and wow, if that was the reality or just an approximation to the reality, is completely insane. I mean, I cannot imagine being alive with a person like that. But it was crazy. But my question is that do you think insane people like Caligula, because I think he was obviously insane.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he had like pleasure from what he did, or he was just inherently miserable and the miserable and his misery was outlaid in how he did things? I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, I mean this actually gets back into Stoicism and the.
I mean, if you're crazy, can you be stoic still?
Yeah, is a question of what do you desire and what do you want?
Yeah.
From life, and if it is kind of acclaim, if it is to be famous, if it is to be obeyed, if it is to have people blindly submit to you, the Stoics would class you as a lunatic. They would say, well, these are just like, these are just silly values. I mean, what was going on in Caligula's head?
It's not rational, in a sense, right?
It's a question of what are your priorities. And this goes back to the physics and the idea of it as a human, as a biological animal living among other people. They're like a rational community of equals. And if somebody suddenly elects themselves special, they're simply wrong. Not morally wrong, but like factually kind of like incorrect.
Yes, exactly.
So Marcus kept in mind, and he says this frequently in the meditations, like, you are a man, you're a human. You're like, your flesh and bone and blood, and you will die. And while you are here for this, short period, be the best human you can possibly be. And Caligula clearly had a completely different set of priorities.
Like it was all mixed up. But yeah, I get you now that if you get back to the facts, well, you could say that we are social animals, and as social animals, there are certain things that you have to do in able to be social and to live with the thing that you are, which is a human being living in a social in a community, right? So my next question is, why is virtue the best bet? Which I think is something that we touched a little bit. Because if you say that your priorities, what are your priorities? If it's fame, if it's money or all that, many people do get it, right? Like a lot of money. I don't know, I'm thinking about rock stars and that type of thing. But they get the money, and then you have Kurt Cobain and they commit suicide. So if many people get their priorities right, and when they get them, they realize that, oh God, that this is not it. It's not what I was actually looking for.
Well, I mean, virtue is kind of presented as the four principal virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. And people see those as a list of things to aspire to. But what they all are is they're all kinds of knowledge. It's a kind of knowing, kind of like knowing kind of what is dangerous and what isn't, knowing what is kind of like measured behavior and what isn't, know what is kind of like what has been thought through, and what makes sense and what doesn't. And this is Epictetus. Virtue is the ability to make judgments. That's what it is. If you boil it right down, it is knowing what to do. And you know what to do with things, like with money, with wealth, with other people, with property. But it's the knowing what to do that is the most important thing. So say take a knife, like a knife. It's nothing. It's an indifference. The Stoic word. But knowing what to do with the knife and what you do with the knife is what matters. Like you could stab somebody with the knife, and that's a bad thing. You could be a surgeon and you could operate on somebody, and that's a good thing. So the only good thing that there really is you knowing what to do with stuff, and that is why virtue is the only good.
Which is, and which is hard, don't you think? Because when you don't know a lot, how do you know how to be good? So maybe you have to really get into, that's why you really have to get into philosophy to really have a good discernment, or do you think that's necessary or not?
Well, it's learned. It's a skill. It's something that you learn how to do. And Stoicism, it was a school. It was a school of philosophy that had lessons and teachers, and there were role models and maxims and and things to learn. So there's various ways of kind of like getting a foot on the ladder as knowing what to, in terms of knowing what to do. But going back to Caligula, I mean, the virtue is your own sanity, basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, in a way.
It is real again, like I am in this situation with these resources, such and such is going on. What is the best thing for me to do? For all concerned, all things considered, like what should I do? And that is what they thought was the most valuable. And the Epicureans are basically wrong, because they say, well, the most important thing in this situation is how much pleasure I can get out of it. You go, well, no, that's not right, is it? Kind of.
Yeah, if you really think
you special, but virtuous knowledge is something that is kind of very much, it's not underplayed. It's not something that's emphasized very much in discussions of Stoicism. It's knowing what you're doing. Is what it's all about.
I like a lot the analogy of your own sanity being virtue, because I've heard that it really what's there's no, well, I saw this with I think it was Hannah Arendt. I don't remember that, the banality of evil, that there's really no evil, but it's just ignorance. Do you think that rings true?
Well, I mean, that's the Stoic. There's a number of paradoxes, which just means kind of like strange ideas, that nobody knowingly does wrong, that everyone is the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
And Adolf Eichmann, like he thought he was doing the right thing. And,
yeah, exactly.
Hannah Arendt said that he I don't know how true this is. This is some debate over this, but she said that he was kind of like, he was like somebody managing a railway. He was putting these people onto railway cars to be taken away to be killed, as if he was filling in shipping manifests.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he did, like the whole humanity of the situation slipped by, and that he didn't kind of, in terms of value, kind of like he put his career, his ideology, his position, his loyalty to his leader above these people, these humans.
Exactly.
So he was just like plain stupid, really. It comes down to it.
Yeah. And when they asked him, it's like, I was just following orders or something like it. But really, I mean, and when you saw the reality of the situation, maybe your priorities again change, and because you didn't have the correct knowledge at the time of what was the best thing for you to do at that moment.
Well, I mean, value is, what is valuable comes back to, like the value of virtue and the value of money and the value of sanity, and the value of humans, of other people. And it's when that gets screwed up, is when people like do hideous things.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's if you look at you get the arguments about cultural relativism, that ethics is it varies from culture to culture. These cultures, they don't have anything in common. But if you look at the difference between ethical systems, they're based on assumptions of fact. That women aren't proper humans. That, that Africans aren't proper humans. That Jews aren't proper humans. That you yourself are a superhuman. I mean, they're factual assumptions that are, are clearly wrong.
Yeah,
So this is
exactly.
where, like knowledge as virtue comes in. And the Stoics were alone in the ancient world as saying, well, kind of like a human is a human. And, that's, man, woman, child, African, Asian, from wherever, like we're all one and the same, which is very strange to hear from that long ago.
Yeah, yeah. So in that sense, I that's why I keep so faithful to Stoicism, because it's factual. It's like, these are the things are as they are. What are we gonna do about this? And this is a like philosophy that actually gives you something that you can actually work on. So I think that's what best. I think I'm gonna skip to my next question. Is what do you think of Henry David Thoreau's quote? Most men lead lives of quiet desperation and die with their songs still inside of them. And do you see any relationship in it to Stoicism? I asked this question because there is this massive self-help and self-betterment movement, and Stoicism has something in it. I remember with Epictetus saying that, how much more are you gonna wait to live the virtuous life, or something in that lines. So do you think Stoicism goes in line with this, or is it more other thing? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm not that familiar with Thoreau, but I mean, I understand that the sentiment. It's kind of pointing at the idea of like each person is kind of has this, like this purpose within themselves that needs to be expressed, and that most people are frustrated and never get to be kind of like what they want to be. And the Stoics kind of like they say, well, that is to be what you ought to be, is in the hands of anybody. What you want to be may not necessarily be what you should be, which is a human. This whole thing, you say, I don't know much about Thoreau, but there's kind of like a big kind of like post-Christian angst, like that now, like we're no longer, like following the church. How do we find meaning in life? Like like God is dead, like there's nothing. And the Stoics said, well, there always is. There always was. There's your humanity. And they have this kind of like this global view of both humanity and of community, and it is a question of where do you belong and where is your point of action in the world, and that's kind of like in the moment. So like if in anything, like what's the meaning of life, you say, well, what can you do now? Like kind of like how can you help? How can you participate? Like if you don't know what you should be doing, ask somebody and say, like, what can I do for you? It's it's kind of like it's a very grounded way of thinking. It's not kind of pleasing spiritual beings or kind of like being a frustrated poet or a painter. It's you kind of you live. This is kind of quite modern in a lot of pop psychology, but you really do live in the moment. What can I do? I am. This is very Stoic. Like I am singing my song. With every breath I take, and like make sure you're in tune. Like make sure you're in harmony. Make sure you're singing with the choir.
Because like every moment requires something from you, right?
Yeah.
So back to the analogy of the knife. Like you yourself are a type of knife that needs to act correctly in the moment. Would you say it?
I hadn't thought of it like that. Yeah, no, but that's very good. What do I do with myself?
Yeah.
It's yeah, I mean, Marcus again, he is my favorite. I keep coming back to him.
Yeah.
But he said, something like, you should be prepared at any moment if anybody asks you, kind of like, what are you thinking about? What are you doing? And it's a question of, like, well, I'm participating. They really do have this global view. This is very modern again. It's kind of like it's the Enlightenment thing that everything collapses back onto the individual. The individual as being kind of like uniquely special, and the Stoics really do take this global view, the view from above, it's called as well, where like you're looking down on society, and you're seeing the workings of the world, and you're seeing how it all runs, and you say, well, like, and that's me. Yeah, like what would I best be doing now? And your ambition is to be the best kind of decision maker, the best decider.
Yeah, in the moment.
Yeah, and you can do that at any position in society.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're an emperor, or you're or a gladiator, or a bus driver, or an accountant, or a cook, like you are the best at that you can possibly be. The best parent, the best friend, the best neighbor. That's the idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in the moment. So I think it will really be to live participation, right?
Yeah.
And it goes a lot like that. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. I would say that quiet desperation is not actually engaging, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite sad. I don't know when it's an idea of isolation. This person is alone.
Yeah, in a way.
And their song is their song that they never got to sing. And I think the Stoic analogy would be more, like there's an opera going on, like the whole time live.
Yeah.
So like get on the stage and sing.
Definitely. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So okay, next question is, do you think of Stoicism as a philosophy of action, like heroic action or heroic suffering? Because I was thinking about this, that a lot of people get close to Stoicism when they are facing like real challenges and like really hard stuff in life. So I don't see Stoicism as a philosophy for sufferers, but a philosophy for people that actually want to thrive in life instead of just coping.
It's the idea is, I mean, you mentioned Job there.
Yeah, exactly.
When you sent me the question, I mean, I don't think Job, we'd have to ask a theologian, but I don't think Job actually suffers, because like he's being tested.
Yes.
For his faith. So like whatever happens to him, he is accepting willingly, because his priority is elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the Stoics are kind of like similar. You can it's Epictetus. He quoting Socrates. He said, like you can kill me, but you can't hurt me.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's so amazing. Yeah.
Like you said, you'd break my leg. Yeah, break my leg.
Epictetus,
break my leg, but like you won't break me.
But you haven't got me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because there's this whole idea of this your moral choice, your moral will, your prohoresis is like nothing can take that away from you. It's there's my favorite, Priscus Helvidius. He was a Roman senator, and he was going to speak against the Emperor Vespasian, and basically upset the Emperor. And the Emperor said, well, like if you speak, I will kill you. And he said, well, I'm going to speak. It's like it's my job to speak. It's your job to kill me. You do your job, I'll do mine.
Exactly.
So it's this idea of
So I feel like they have the ultimate word. Like you have the ultimate word, which is your word, and you can choose to take it or not, right?
Yeah, I mean they're old-fashioned words, like it's dignity and honesty and integrity and doing the right thing. So like if you think you're suffering, kind of like, are you really?
Yeah.
I mean, the physical pain is one thing, and that's hard to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
But especially like in the modern world, it's like most of our suffering is failed expectations. Like we didn't get what we wanted.
Yeah.
Well, what did you want? Well, I wanted the job, I wanted the car, I wanted the girlfriend. Yeah, I wanted the new watch, and I didn't get it, so I'm upset. And the Stoics said, well, like you don't need any of that. You could, you just are. Your ability to understand the world and to deal appropriately with whatever happens in any circumstance, and that is immortal. That can't be taken away from.
Which could be even torture. I mean, like with Stockdale and Viktor Frankl. I'm thinking about those people. Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps, that he says that the last of human freedoms, the last of human freedom is like inside your power of how you're going to respond to the situation.
Yeah, there's a quote from that. Give
a man search for meaning.
Give a man a why to live, and he can deal with any how.
Oh yes, exactly.
So something along those lines, which I think is Dostoevsky or Nietzsche, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the question of what are you here for? And the purpose. And this is very out of fashion these days. It's very traditional, but that you are looking for values outside yourself.
Yeah, exactly. But if you go back, like, because outside yourself, you're never gonna fool yourself in a way. I mean, you always get something, and 2 weeks after it, you want something else. But if what you need is inside of you, that's what you were going to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a self-sufficiency. It's it's an autonomy. It's a toolkit. It's Marcus again. He said, like the nature has given us the tools to deal with anything that can be thrown at a human.
Yeah.
So like whatever happens, I am equipped, or I'm capable of being equipped.
Yeah, exactly.
To deal with anything.
Yeah. I think I have a question here. Do you think there's a limit to your will, or but I'm just gonna put a situation here. Like, has it ever happened to you that you're really tired in your day, and at the end of the day, maybe you don't want to work on something that you had to work on, or I don't know, something like it, and you're just tired. Do you think? I mean, because the will, I'm talking about the power of will, which you have.
Is that Baumeister?
Is that what?
There's
no,
it's a guy called Baumeister who did stuff on the endurance of will. And
I think I'm going there with the endurance of will, because for the Stoics, the will is extremely important because that's how you act, but it varies. So do you think that when you're, for example, in torture and all that, it's when they break you, or do you think that it's something that you always have?
It's will is a funny word. The Greeks didn't really have it. We've been using it. They the word that they have that is translated as will is prohairesis, which is moral choice.
Yes.
Which is basically, if you know the dichotomy of control, kind of like what is up to me and what isn't. And that is basically the ability to say yes or no to your own ideas. And that doesn't take a lot of effort. That's not the same as kind of like, like I've got to finish my tax returns and like there's another hour to do and I'm really beat, and like I'd rather be watching TV or like anything like that. So I mean, so people certainly get tired. And
but you have to deal with that tiredness as well, like with your dichotomy of control.
Yeah. I mean, and knowing when to take a rest would be
as well.
Would be part of it. Like there's no point working yourself into the ground where you're just making mistakes. I mean, Seneca, he says, like drinking wine and lying down, listening to some nice music is perfectly fine because you
Definitely.
need that.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
like you are a human organism which needs rest. So they do have this moral standpoint, but like you're not expected to be superhuman.
Yeah, so like I guess it comes back to the moment. So if you're tired or the things that you're facing in the moment, like you have to have this dichotomy of control, which is how can I deal with this best, right? And that would be the thing that you do have power on at any moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, basically it's saying yes or no to your own ideas. So you're there doing your paperwork, and you're kind of having a conversation with yourself. Should I stick with this for another half an hour, or should I go and watch TV?
Yeah.
That is up to you. That is up to you. That is your choice to make.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you're a sensible person. If I can't keep my eyes open and I keep making mistakes, you can have the conversation with yourself. Well, like, should I carry on for another half an hour, or should I, like have a nap and then come back to it later? I mean, you can do that as well.
Like it comes back to knowledge, right?
It's knowing what to do, and that would physically be knowing your own limits.
Exactly.
Like not attempting the impossible. Like choosing the hardest way to do something, like it doesn't make any sense.
Definitely.
So
I think that leads perfectly to my next question, which is what do you think of free will? Do you think that Stoicism can still exist without agency? Why? I put here that I read the article, but I read an article that you showed on Living Stoicism of Aeon magazine, and they make the claim that free will does exist in a way. And to be honest, it was quite complicated. I need to read it again, but it made a good position of free will actually existing. But there's this battle, I think, right now between free will exists or does it not? And how do you think Stoicism enters here?
I mean, the big debate at the moment is it's a bit confused. It's going back to the kind of like the end of, well, not the end of Christianity, but the people kind of like moving on with it. It's basically it's an argument with Christians. There's Sam Harris,
Sam Harris,
Derek Boyne, and people like that. They're all, because Christians and Jews have this idea of free will, they're saying, well, no, you don't have this kind of like spirit being within you that can make decisions that are not physically determined. You don't have that. So therefore, and then you get a gap. They're ... Therefore what? Therefore we don't make decisions at all. Therefore we're robots. So basically, I think that's a red herring. The Stoics had this. They were strict determinists. So everything happens because something has happened before. So everything is determined. But we certainly make decisions. I mean, we just do. I mean, we think. I mean, if we don't make decisions, like, what is thinking for? And why does it take time? Like, should I be a doctor? Should I join the circus? Like, if I don't have free will, or if I don't make decisions, what's that conversation about? So clearly I'm thinking, like, this is involved in joining the circus. This is involved in becoming a doctor. What do I want to do? I'll do this, I'll do that. I may do this, I may do the other. You talk to some friends. So there's a whole process going on before you actually say, okay, like, okay, I'm going to medical school. So yes, I mean, we make choices, and it's a free choice. Like,
Yeah, because even for
like, nobody else
survivors.
has pushed me.
Sorry?
Like, the two options are mine, and it's up to me to decide them.
Yeah.
And you actually want the process behind that to be a deterministic process. Because if I either want to join the circus or be a doctor, and I decide to, okay, being a doctor is the thing, and then I go off and join the fire department because it's not determined. I mean, where do you want the non-determinism to come into your decision making?
Let me see if I got you right. So deterministic determinism is the idea that something happened before, and that's why everything is happening on and on forever, right?
Yeah.
But how do you enter the decision you have for, if I don't know, if the world gives you these things that are the causes for something, you function as a filter that decides what are you going to do about these causes, and not these causes determining what are you going to do? Or
I mean, it all comes down to thought, to thinking, and to language. Because we're not balls on a pool table. We're not just banged about by physical forces.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're moving kind of concepts around in our head, and this does get quite technical.
Yes, yeah.
But for the Stoics, the fact that we are using words to talk to each other and to have an internal dialogue. That words aren't things. Words are kind of like signs, and we can move those around and attach values to them and manipulate them as we will. And it is us doing it. It's kind of like it's me thinking. It's me having a conversation with myself. It's me, like making notes, drawing diagrams, writing lists, pros and cons. It's not as if somebody's kind of like hit one snooker ball and it hits another snooker ball and bang, off I go to medical school. It's so we make choices. I mean, you may not want to call that free will, but we certainly make decisions.
Yeah, I think
it's what we do. We're decision-making machines.
Exactly. Yeah. And to outlay decisions, and the more that you can outlay, the better your chances of surviving. I was reading this article about the chimpanzees being the ones that can wait. How was it? Like the chimpanzees being the animals that can wait more for a threat. Before a threat happens, they can wait more for their reward to happen. So they can make a decision either to run from the threat or to wait for the reward, in comparison to other animals, which cannot wait that much, 2 seconds and that's it. But if you have a longer frame of what you can wait for a reward to happen, you open your options, and therefore the freedom you have to act within those options.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because what that involves is imagining the future.
Yes, yeah.
And this is what we are very, very good at.
Yeah.
Is imagining alternative futures. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? If I do this, what will happen then? And then what will the consequences be? So we have a huge kind of like mental space, kind of like a virtual machine, where we can test our ideas in kind of like in mental space before we act on them. And that kind of like mental space is ours, like it's going on in my head.
Exactly.
So do you want to kind of like take the money or open the box? It's like it's me doing the thinking.
It reminds me that the quote from William James, my first act of free will be to decide that I have a free will.
Oh yeah. No, love William James. Somebody I keep meaning to read and keep not getting around to.
William James is amazing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna jump to the next question. What do you think about emotion control? How do you manage it? And here first, I would love you to explain what we were talking about. What Stoics think emotion is, in a way, like with the Stoicism and Emotion book.
It's one they didn't have a word for emotion, which complicates things. But they had this idea of passions.
Exactly.
They called them, which back then meant it was a negative thing. A passion is suffering. And this is very modern. You see this in modern cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's a neuroscientist called Lisa Feldman Barrett who's doing a lot of research on this. And emotions are beliefs. It's aboutness, which is a buzzword in cognitive philosophy. You are frightened about things. You are worried about things. So emotions are opinions. You are frightened of something because you believe that something will happen because of it. So the Stoics, their therapy of the passions is to address the assumptions that lie behind your negative feelings about things. So again, it's very cognitive. It's about words. It's about language. And again, going back to imagining futures, kind of like worrying about things that haven't happened yet. Because you're telling yourself stories that haven't happened. So it's a big contrast to this idea that emotions are just things that happen to us, and we kind of like have to tame them and deal with them. We create them. They're inventions of our own minds. We think them into being, basically, and we can unthink them if we go back to this system of what is truly valuable. They actually do conclude that there is actually nothing to worry about. If you're worried about something, you're confused.
Exactly. That's what
the bottom line.
That's the thing that you're confused, but sometimes I think I would enter here the shock, right? That shock's another thing in comparison to the beliefs that you have.
If somebody, we discussed this yesterday. If somebody leaps out at you, or somebody just hits you in the head, like clearly there's a reflex and you may lash back at them. But the idea of emotion is kind of like the slow burn, kind of like I'm gonna get you, or I'm worthless, or I'll never be happy, or like so and so doesn't love me. Like A, is it true? B, is it important? And it's kind of like pulling apart these the thoughts. So stripping is the Stoics call it. Like strip things back to their bare bones.
And like when you get it to the bare bones, you kind of feel like when you understand something, like it gives you peace in a way. That's like stripping.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, or I said this before. All emotions are negative emotions. They're failed expectations.
Exactly.
You wanted something, and which goes back to imagine futures.
Yeah.
Like I thought this was going to be the case, and I invested in this being the case, and it didn't turn out. Which gets back into the Stoic thing of loving fate. Kind of like whatever happens is, I accept it.
Yeah, I accept
I'll
it.
have that. My wife's left me and run off with all my money. Okay, it's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what it is. It is what it is.
Exactly. And like I have everything I need to face it, which is my dichotomy of control. So I will act on the moment with whatever needs to be done in a way.
Yes.
Right.
Kind of any given moment is is the starting point, is the point of action for doing the best thing.
Yeah. So, I think that's why it feels so good when you see heroic action. Like a person, in spite of the everything that happens, he still pushes through it because he has this thing inside of him that pushes back. Like Camus.
Yes, well, I mean that gets back to Frankl again. Like you give me a why.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a why I should do this. Like I'll just do it. It's and it's priorities. I was thinking back to the Epicureans. And I was thinking about, this might be a bit sensitive actually. I was thinking about the Alamo. You're not still touchy about the Alamo, are you?
No. What's
the Battle of the Alamo? No, I was just thinking. I was watching an old film that if you imagine that the old film from the 50s or whatever, you've got the people in the fort and they're defending it. The Stoic would be the guy kind of like on the wall with a gun, and he would be there kind of like fighting till his last breath. And the Epicurean would be looking how to maximize his own pleasure.
Yeah.
So he would be disguised as a pregnant woman, kind of like hiding with the children, looking to kind of like to sneak out through the sewers.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is a sense of purpose, a sense of what is important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, which leads me way back to Stoicism. That's why I really love this philosophy, because I cannot find anything that's more sensible than Stoicism. So, okay, my last question is, I don't know if you're familiar with Ernest Becker and the denial of that. It's with his book.
Yeah, I did have a quick look actually.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Immortality Projects and Memento Mori. Okay, do you believe that just by thinking about that often, it's enough to find out what is important and what is not for you? Like thinking morbidly gives you impatience, it gets you anxious because you feel you haven't done yet what needs to be done in your life, as if you haven't fulfilled your potential. I'm sorry, it's quite long. Montaigne said that philosophy is learning how to die. Do you come to this readiness? How do you become ready to die? If I don't know if you got me.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, sorry.
It's Socrates, I think, in Plato somewhere that said philosophy is precisely preparing kind of like how to die. But it's kind of like not the morbid Seneca on the shortness of life. The idea that our lives are finite. That like that we're not going to be here forever. Kind of like act now. Like you can't be constantly postponing. Kind of like being a good person. You can't like learning. You can't find out what's important tomorrow. You should be kind of like on that. And the other thing is that you could die at any moment. As well. So you kind of like like what are you doing now? It's so it's I think the idea is that death is kind of like it's like a stark reminder that, you know, like is this Marcus? Yeah, like the time for action is now.
Exactly.
Right action, right deeds, right thoughts, like get onto it. And yeah, and stop delaying things. It's a bit of a tangent, but there was some Chinese martial artist guy I was listening to. He said that all roads may lead to Rome, but you may not get there. And where you're going to be on the route, like so like you can't think, constantly, when I get to this place, then I'll be happy. When I have this, when I've achieved this, like this is my route, this is my path. The end of your path could be in the next 2 minutes. You really do not know. So this is really a call to virtue,
because it brings you back to the moment.
Is to be doing what you ought to be doing.
I think I need to apologize here real quick, because I didn't really explain what's Immortality Project for the person viewing this.
Oh, God.
So the Immortality Project of Ernest Becker, Immortality Project, is that we are so repelled from death that what we do is, as symbolic beings, like we can imagine ourselves in the future, right? So the Immortality Project is like this idea we have of ourselves of surviving after death, such as that's why people put their names that's why people like to have street names with their name, right?
Yeah.
Or you do a massive business that forgoes ages, or you write books, or you do anything, because it's like the Immortality Project that you have. Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, the sound cut out for a second there.
It's an Immortality Project that you have in a way to survive that. And that's why I thought about memento mori being that when you think about that, like it really gives you an idea of what you should actually be doing in a way. Because because what's really important, like and it gets you back to the moment, like what I'm doing right now, is it meaningful in a way?
Yeah, I mean it is kind of like living, you get the one life, and the Stoics again, they didn't have an afterlife, so there was no do-over, if you like. And the idea of doing things for posterity was just like not a thing. And it's Marcus again. He says Alexander the Great is dead, and so is his donkey driver. Like they're dead. And he goes through a big list of people. He said, like, this guy's dead, and this guy's dead, and this guy's dead, and this guy was famous and he just like died pitifully, and this guy was a great philosopher and he died kind of like covered in worms, so this is it, this life.
I think your idea is really important.
I mean, and why do you care if you're remembered after you're dead? Because you won't be there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the idea of just thinking on posterity. You said about street names and writing books. It's just it's just not a thing.
I think
like, the idea, like we're a speck in the the vastness of time. Like just to say, okay, like I'm gonna kind of like have my reputation last just a little bit longer is just you're wasting your time.
Definitely. I think the idea of the moment, I think that's really powerful here, because you come back to it. I mean, I've been no, sorry. Like I think I come back a lot to it to really the only thing that you have to, because there's a ton of things to worry about in life, right? Like tons. But if you were really going to die at any moment, and that's entirely possible, you would like to really take like the marrow of life as much as you can from the moment that you're actually living, right? So maybe in a way, learning how to die is learning how to be entirely alive in the moment.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's on the shortness of life. Seneca, he kind of like he kind of like has a kind of like a berating way of talking. He's like, like, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're wasting your time away. How old are you and you still haven't worked this out?
Yeah, that's what I. Yeah,
get on with
that's
it.
What I mean.
Stop complaining, get out there and live.
Yeah.
We're going back to your, the guy that with his song left unsung.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, get out there and sing.
Yeah, but it's like, don't worry if you don't worry and put yourself over if you haven't done things, and because it doesn't matter. What matters is what you actually do every single moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, the idea is the goal of all the Greek schools is a good life.
Yeah.
To live a good life, and that kind of like has a duration, if you like. So while you are kind of like living it moment by moment, they use a lot of analogy of like craft and of art.
Exactly.
And so you're living your life is kind of like it's a creative process. You're kind of like you're sculpting yourself as you go. You're getting better at living as you go, as a kind of like an ongoing educational process. Like you say, like you might end at any minute, but it is ongoing. Like you are thinking about kind of priorities and direction and what kind of person you want to be.
Exactly.
Which is actually, thinking about it, is a big priority in Stoicism. It's not what you have, and it's less what you do. It's kind of more the person you are, kind of like aspiring to be a particular kind of person, which is a person who knows what they're doing and does it as best they can.
Like a person practicing their craft.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
and dying doing that, and that's what would be like. Yeah, this.
I mean, they use wrestling as a metaphor. Gladiators, they use soldiers, and they use dancers as well. Seneca and Cicero both use dancers.
Okay.
Like in it, like life is like a dance, and you can like do it well and get better as you're doing it, and you're dancing in the moment.
Yeah, and dancing is amazing.
Dance will go on. You don't know when it's going to finish, but it will go on.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just love Stoicism. I don't think there's anything else out there like it, really.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think that's a beautiful idea to end the podcast with the dancing.
Dancing your life. Yeah.
Dancing your life. Yeah, definitely. That's pretty good. So James, thanks a lot for being at the podcast. It was really good, and I enjoyed a lot of the conversation, and definitely hope we can do it again, maybe with other topics and that. But well, thanks a lot, man.
It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
cheers.
So see you guys until next time, and thanks for watching Stoic Answers podcast. Until next time.